Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. Today we have a manga review of chapter 893, 36th daughter of the Charlotte family, Flampe. And as usual, it looks like every theory I had at the end of last chapter turned out to be wrong. I was definitely in the camp of Luffy's injury being future sight, and I was really hoping that this chapter would begin a couple of seconds before the end of the last chapter, and showing us Luffy dodging the attack or something along those lines. However, what we got is actually so much better than anything I could have imagined. And before we all go crazy calling Katakuri some sort of honorable man, I really don't think that's the case here at all. Rather than honor, I think this is more of an action to do with pride and vanity. As we've already established, Katakuri is a character who cares a hell of a lot about what people think about him. He goes to great lengths to present his image in the most favorable way possible. He has all of the Big Mom pirates, including himself actually, convinced that he is invincible. But then, along comes Luffy, and Luffy is probably the strongest opponent Katakuri has ever faced. So I think the last possible thing Katakuri wants is for everybody to be thinking that he only beat Luffy because of Flambe's help. No, that is completely unacceptable. He is so vain that he believes he can defeat Luffy no matter what, and that's why he leveled the playing field. And there is a big difference between that and honor. Honor would be something more along the lines of the thought that this battle has become unfair for my opponent due to some sort of outside factor, and as a result, I will level the playing field to preserve the integrity of battle. A good example of something like that is probably Frankie vs. Senor Pink during the Dressrosa arc, but I don't think that's what's happening here. This is all about Katakuri maintaining his invincible reputation, which I really like because it's a much more fresh take on this kind of situation. Regardless of why he made this decision though, I have been seeing people claim on a few forums that it potentially reveals an inconsistency in terms of his writing. The argument being that previously Katakuri was a very calculated and careful character, who stated something along the lines of needing to eliminate Luffy quickly before he becomes a threat. Which is in stark contrast to now, where he is actively making this fight as fair as possible for Luffy. And I think that train of thought is just on the wrong track. Primarily for the reason I've already stated, Katakuri is vain. In his mind, this fight has already been won, and the Big Mom pirates are no longer subject to any sort of threat. All that remains in his mind is how people are going to view his victory over Luffy, which essentially boils down to whether he did it himself, or whether they will perceive him as needing help from his little sister. And that's about it. Now let's be real, this decision is going to result in great things for Luffy and terrible things for the Big Mom pirates, but to me, that is purely because of a structured character flaw, and not an issue of inconsistent writing. Katakuri's overwhelming pride is going to take him down, and I love that. It makes him so much more of an interesting character than just some perfect in every way super dude. Alright, now I'm aware I'm talking a hell of a lot about Katakuri, but the chapter was really about him. And also this week we have the reveal that he has Conqueror's Haki. This doesn't necessarily surprise me, I definitely expect anybody who has a bounty over 1 billion berries to possess it, but I've noticed that it's gotten a few people offside, spouting nonsense that Conqueror's Haki is far too common. In reality, Katakuri is only the 10th person in the series to be confirmed to possess Conqueror's Haki. And 2 of those other 9 characters, Whitebeard and Ace, are dead. So he's one of 8 in the whole wide world right now who has Conqueror's Haki. That doesn't seem so common to me. On the other hand, I can understand to some degree why people might be a bit upset with this though. One day it would just be really cool to have a super powerful character not be a user of Conqueror's Haki. So fingers crossed that Jack or maybe even Kaido himself are just so boss that they don't need it, but I doubt it. Now I suppose we do need to ask the question of exactly how Luffy is still standing. The injury he received last chapter looked undeniably brutal, but I suspect that instead of having a chunk of his torso blown away, he was simply stabbed and we interpreted the artwork in a different way. So yeah, I think that's just something we'll need to accept and move on. But Luffy still does have a rather big hole in his stomach now, so I don't think he'll be able to use Gear 4th, at least not at maximum power. Maybe he'll be able to isolate an arm or something, but his ultimate form at the moment seems out of the question to me. And last week I spouted a bunch of theories about how Luffy is going to get out of this, but I want to quickly reiterate the idea that Luffy may just awaken his devil fruit during this fight. Primarily because that would surely be a way he could engage in Gear 4th techniques without strictly using his body, like how Katakuri was able to spring limbs out of nowhere coated in Haki. So while that might happen, what I'm secretly hoping for is that this fight goes more in the direction of Film Z, ending up in a situation where Luffy and Katakuri just pummel the hell out of each other. No huge attacks, nothing fancy, just down and dirty punching. And maybe at the very end, Luffy has his first true use of Future Sight to land a decisive blow on Katakuri. There was also a very popular theory that popped up last chapter that I have very much subscribed to, and that is the idea that the single mirror left on Cacao Island is going to be the site of Katakuri's defeat. And I love this idea because narratively it is absolutely perfect because everyone is gathered around it waiting for Luffy. So the shock that would occur when Katakuri's defeated body is flung through there would just be amazing, especially because he's no longer covering his mouth now. At the same time, it's also becoming less and less likely in my mind that Luffy will actually defeat Katakuri. Rather, I feel like this fight is heading into the direction of a draw, which I wouldn't mind at all. It's kind of the best of both worlds. Luffy levels up, proves he can take on top tier combatants, but does not actually beat someone worth over 1 billion berries. A lot of people seem to be worried about power levels in One Piece at the moment and find the idea of Luffy being able to beat Katakuri simply repulsive, so I'd hope that the idea of a draw subdues them somewhat. Moving on to the only other relevant character in the chapter, I have rather quickly come to the conclusion that I do not like Charlotte Flampe. I think she had some potential with her cool bubblegum design, but she really ended up being a shallow, stupid, young girl-like character, which is fine, I guess. I mean, not all the Charlotte siblings can be amazing, but it's really off-putting to see just how quickly Flampe turns on Katakuri. I guess it's like that old phrase about being careful never to meet your heroes because they can't possibly live up to the expectations you've generated for them. It's also quite a nice commentary on how a fanbase can quickly turn on you. I mean, I'm sure that Oda has had very similar reactions thrown at him for making one decision or another, and if he reads the Arlong Park or Oro Jackson forums, then he certainly will have. So maybe that was his inspiration for Flampe. I really don't know what Flampe's endgame was though. And what I mean by that is all the stuff about having Katakuri's picture taken and planning to spread it all around Totland. I mean, you need to remember that Katakuri is still the strongest member of the Big Mom Pirates bar Big Mom herself, and presumably is one of the strongest people in the entire world. So surely Flampe's instinct of self-preservation would stop her from poking the bear. Or in this case, poking the pelican eel. By the way, the pelican eel is a creature I had no idea existed. It's so cool though, and just briefly on that, there is a one-panel flashback of Katakuri as a boy being teased for having a pelican eel looking face. And this is throwing up warning bells for me because I'm really hoping that this is not the first sign that he's going to switch sides at some point. Because when you think about it, the villains who get flashbacks seem to become allies. And now that Luffy and Katakuri have this warrior's respect thing going on, I could see Katakuri coming to help Luffy in the future, but I definitely don't want it to happen. And back to Flampe, I'm really glad that she and every other soldier in the vicinity is now down for the count, because it means that we are finally about to get serious here. And that pretty much does it for chapter 893. A very solid and isolated chapter where not much really happened when you think about it, but I loved it regardless. Katakuri has grown on me to the point where he is one of my favorite characters in the entire series, so I will never complain with an entire chapter focusing on him. So this chapter was hype as hell, and I cannot wait for next week. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe, and please do comment with your thoughts on the chapter. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.